It's a high chaos ball, a wobbler. Oh, Reynolds, favoured by the bounce. He's going to turn it round the body, and he's got enough on it.
Welcome to Before the Bounce. We're here at Ray White Real Estate. I'll tell you what, Ando, that's just pretty good digs
I'm
here,
very
mate.
comfortable at the moment.
Hey?
You might have to nudge me a couple of times to keep me awake, I reckon.
I reckon Rach has done a great job. We've had the backdrop. Pretty good, isn't it?
It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Great grand final too, that one. It was a fantastic grand final a couple of years ago, North. So I reckon it was one of the best grand finals I've seen.
Yeah, got a big crowd in for that. We'll get Rach on, have a little chat with her later on the show because she does a lot to support local sport here in South Australia. Mate, there's a fair bit to get through at the moment, and I've got a list here from Rocky Butterworth, but I want to open with a couple of staging. I'm nearly over the staging this year, and there's been some ripping stages, and we've seen a couple more recently. Who are some of the best stages you've seen over your career?
Look, first of all, it's been creeping in our game the last 3 or 4 years. Getting a free kick, it's so important. If you can stage it, it's such a huge advantage. But to me, it's not part of our game, and I'm really happy it's actually come to this. It's really boiled over to say, well, we've got to do something about it, and I think we do. In my day, I thought Darren Buick was very, very good at it. I thought he was brilliant. He was a great stager. And because he was a forward, he was very handy. He got it locked in front of goals, which was great. As a teammate, absolutely brilliant. When it was a reverse side, and all of a sudden I'm playing against him, and I'm watching him stage, I was getting pretty frustrated. I was getting very, very frustrated.
All right, I'll throw us a couple of names. What about Neville Roberts?
Pretty good. I mean, look, I didn't get to see a lot of Neville in his heyday.
Yep.
Right at the moment, all I'm remembering is him keeping that ball, which I know went out, a bounce.
Yep.
And he kept on playing, kicked that goal in that grand final that put Nord 9 points up. So,
I don't know enough about it. What about Gavin Wanganeen?
He was a rubber man. He got criticised, very strongly of always bringing the neck back and
was he more the stager than the?
Oh, look, I think,
was he
the
just
funny thing to say that.
And
no, because I think towards the end of his career, he wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
Yet he was doing it quite a bit, earlier in his career. He was, and that was staging for free kicks. And then obviously it got a lot of sort of media attention.
Yeah.
And, all of a sudden it got staged, it got out of his game because the umpire was aware of it.
All right, Kevin Bartlett. I don't know that Kevin played by the rules, but the bounce and then he'd throw his arms back when he'd been tackled. Will you see that staging or playing by the rules?
That's playing by the rules, because that was part of the rules. You see a lot of the old highlights. Once you grabbed it, you threw the ball out and you said, hold the man. So it was it was an interesting one because, I actually watched some old highlights of the Magpies. I reckon it was Brucey Light and Andy Portleisha and Carl Fragamini and that probably happened 3 or 4 times during the 4 or 5 minutes I watched of it, some old highlights. So I think it was more part of it back then.
Yeah. Hey, just quickly, you mentioned him, Brucey Light. Was there a quicker player?
He was fantastic.
His time?
No, he was.
I reckon he was
electric,
absolutely.
Wasn't he? He was electric. And and look, I barracked for Russ Liebert, Bruce Light, then basically Port Adelaide Footy Club when I was a kid.
Okay.
And to actually see some of these highlights, thrown onto Facebook, and they're only 3 or 4 minutes, and I really got to see and remembered the brilliance of Brucey Light. Wow, what an absolute champion.
All right, this one's been a hobby horse of mine for a while. I'm thinking now, because we're into COVID, and there's 30 AFL players currently in hubs at the moment that are going to play in the grand final. Should all of those players get a medal? Now, traditionally, it's the 24 players that are involved on the day. Yeah. But I'm saying, and I have said for a long time, without those players, they can't win it. They don't even make it to the premiership. Now, there's 2 things with this. One is, I think it's a team that wins you a premiership. So they're part of the team. So if anytime you've played 1 game or more, I think you're entitled to the premiership medal. Certainly this year with the 30 players in the hub, what they've had to give up. I also think there's a mental component to it. Now, you know this. You've spoken to blokes that you played with, and I've coached and played with guys that haven't got a championship ring or haven't got a medal. They still talk about it today, and it's really distressing for them. And I just think we're in a really difficult time. And the AFL is in a unique spot where they could reward all the players that have done that on the day.
Before you actually said that, I would say no. You've got to keep your tradition.
Yep.
And the players that represent
on
the day receive the medals, and that's that. But when you look at the mental health issues of what's happening in all sports, there could be a responsibility of the AFL taking the lead and saying whether you played one game or you got the medal for best on ground in the grand final, you deserve a medal. So, and as tough as it has been in COVID-19, and look, I take my hat off to the AFL of putting the fixture out and how structured it was.
Done a great
but
job.
I really take my hat off to all the players. All the players. I mean, their turnover's been 4 or 5 days in some incidents between rounds. So, they have they've left their families. They've thrown themselves into hubs. Obviously, it's been very, very tough for them, whether they've played or they haven't played. They haven't had an opportunity to play reserve football. So all of a sudden, they've come up and played, AFL footy without any preparation. And I think they've done it beautifully. So perhaps they might lead the way for 2020 and onwards.
Yeah,
because there is a mental health issue. Because you're very true. You've missed out. You've been emergency in that grand final, and there'd be nothing worse.
Yeah. All right. Let's have a look at the topical issues that are going around at the moment, mate. Tex Walker, of course, played his 200th game on the weekend. 3 touches. I think he's playing injured, but I think what he's giving Nixie at the moment is that smart head on the footy ground, even though he's not dominating on the field. I think he's giving them the experience they need.
Yeah,
has he got another year in him? What's your thought?
Look, I don't think he has. I look at this year and I think he's averaging 5 possessions a game. And you think when you're playing football, you know how to somehow find the ball, and he was doing that years ago. And I think he's really struggled a little bit last year and certainly this year to find the ball. I don't know whether he's injured or not, and
I'm guessing.
The scenario.
I'm guessing
me,
myself.
I would say that if you're sort of averaging those sort of possessions, that pretty much you could really get a junior into that spot, and he's going to get 3 or 4 possessions as well, and he's going to be the future. That's my only question on that. Are clubs holding on to players, their senior players, too long? We saw it at West Coast many years ago. We saw it at Hawthorn many years ago. We saw it with Carlton many years ago. We saw it with Essendon many years ago. And it takes, 6-7 years for that club to come back into line.
Sure.
Now, has this happened with the Adelaide Football Club?
Yeah, it may be. I'm a little bit...
You're a coach. I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to interrupt you. You're a coach. Do you play a player that's only played 3 or 4, has only had 3 or 4 possessions on an average in the last 10 weeks?
I don't know what else he's being asked to do, so we don't know.
Very true. He's centre half forward.
But
and it's a tough position.
I think what you're saying has some validity to it.
Yeah.
So my question is...
He's a wonderful... I'm just saying he's been, and he is a wonderful player, one of the most exciting players that has worn the Adelaide Guernsey, no question. But I really do. I love catching up with him. I really hope he sort of is carrying injury, because if he's feeling good and he's only holding 3 or 4 possessions...
So there's your question. I think that's the question at the end of the year. 2 things. One, is he playing with the injury that is inhibiting being the player he wants to be? The second one is, again, if he's injured and they're playing those short back-to-back games, he's got no time to recover from the injury. So it's actually compounding the injury. It's probably giving him another one. So I'd like to know...
It was talked about his pre-season wasn't great as well, and with a few niggly injuries. So, I mean, all those sort of things, is a domino effect. But, as a coach, and you're looking at, the youth of the Adelaide Footy Club, and that's where they're pushing all the media. We're looking at youth. I think there's some younger players that could probably get 3 or 4 possessions at centre half forward at the moment.
So we're saying he's a question mark. You haven't quite ruled him out. For me, it's a question mark. For you, is it a question mark?
It's still a question mark. I don't know the situation, and like I said, but certainly in the circumstance of only getting 3 or 4 possessions a game, you're getting a game. I think he's pretty lucky.
So what you're saying, statistically, you wouldn't have him, but if there's more evidence, then we need to hear all the evidence.
And if he's only just a flick of a coin for the Tex Walker we know, well, then they're doing the right thing.
All right, what about Melbourne, mate? Poor Goody's probably losing his mind at the moment. So they beat North by 55. They get Collingwood by 57. Then they're Maxi Gawn, the captain, is out. So is it no Gawn, no Melbourne? Then the Bulldogs get them comfortably by 28. Look, is it that simple?
We spoke about this the other week, that I think the ruckman is underrated a little bit in today's game.
Agreed.
And you look at Nat Nui, he all of a sudden, the game's in the balance, and all of a sudden he gets serious, and all of a sudden they win by 5 or 6 goals. So I think Matty Gawn is captain, but he's so important to the team. And when you're looking at the criticism, Goody cop a few weeks ago, and then they come out and as a club played beautiful footy for a couple of weeks. You lose your captain, your most important player, you're going to be behind the 8 ball. And unfortunately, they were last week.
All right, when you talk about ruckman, apparently you shouldn't tackle them. You know, if you tackle them and knock them to the ground, then you're going to get reported for that and possibly get a game. So
it's interesting when you're
I know it should be Sam Powell Pepper, but is it Sam Powell Lynch? Because Lynch seems to be able to get off everything. So he's only been reported 18 times and had 1 suspension. So maybe you can have the Lynch rule come in.
Look, I thought that the tackle was very fair, was great. And when you're knowing you're tackling 110 kilos, you've got to give a bit more. You know that. I mean, it's fair enough. If it's a player that's 5'10" and sitting at 75 kilos, and you've grabbed him and you've brought him down to the ground. But when you grab someone and he's a lot heavier than you are, you've got to give a little bit to make the tackle stick. And that's what he's done, and he executed it beautifully.
I'll say this to you, mate. Pre-COVID, I was at a function and had a chance to talk to Sam and see him. I reckon if he was tackling me, I'd be running away. I think it's going to be pretty ferocious, like a runaway train, mate, coming to get you. Hey, just quickly, John Longmire, what's your take on him at Sydney? Is he just in a rebuild? Buddy Franklin's been put in cotton wool. He's out for the rest of the season now, won't play again till next year. Longmire just going through a rebuild phase or a difficult phase?
Well, it's been a couple of years now.
Too?
It's been a couple of years. So, it's a rebuild. I mean, I think they had lots of injuries last year and they would have probably thought that with a good pre-season, again interrupted with the COVID, players not doing the pre-season they would like to do. I think it's pretty hard to judge. I would like to think, to be fair, you need to do a good, strong pre-season, get all your best players on the field, and have a go. But this has been a tough year for all clubs, and I think it's pretty hard to say that you can be judged, Johnny Longmire by COVID-19 2020.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty good coach. I think the horse is safe. Hey, just quickly on the SANFL, Jay Sheedy, mate, he'd just be sitting at home with the Samsung air condister on, thinking life's pretty good, sitting on top of the ladder first year.
What about his
and the reserves are doing the same.
His whole squad is like, A's 8-1 and 8-1 for the leagues. I mean, he's just going beautifully. Yep. He's a great person. He's done a bit of apprenticeship in the SANFL, and also of course the amateur league. And he's just come along this year and he's going, how easy is this? How easy is this?
Yep, sitting on top of the ladder is pretty easy. Well, they got a good test come Friday night. They play Norwood, so it'll be an interesting test. Norwood need to win to stay in the finals race. We're off and running. This is brought to us by Corsair Diffusion Agencies. Samsung, also great sponsors of ours. Stay with us. Ando's up next.
And welcome back to Before the Bounce. There's no show without Ando.
Please.
Finally, the viewers are there saying, when's my segment? Well, it's right now, and I'm very, very excited.
They are on the edge of their seat waiting for no show without Ando.
I'm going to get to it shortly,
yeah?
But the comments are fantastic.
Jerry Seinfeld's written you a letter?
Oh, mate, he's
Kramer,
they're going to sue me. Giddy up. No suit for you, he reckons.
No suit for you.
Shrinkage, there's a whole lot, everything. We can just throw everything at it. But I will throw this at you. The yips in front of goals.
Yep.
Now, you play, and you're a brilliant shot yourself in basketball, and I suppose there's many times when you're just wasn't going right for you and hitting the ring or hitting the back of the ring and bouncing out and not happening, and your teammates are in the same scenario. How do you get around that? Because we're seeing a lot in the AFL that they take a mark in front of goals. The goals, I think the old goalpost must just go in for them before they kick, because they seem to really get the wobbles.
I reckon there's two things with it, Ando. The first one is you've had a couple of weeks where you're missing a lot. So the scores are 6-15, then next week you're 8-14. Suddenly there's a lot of focus on your goal kicking. More from externally. The media are saying, and the fans, how do you miss in front of goal? How do you miss in front of goal? So it starts to put that external pressure, and then the coaches start to think, well, do we need to get the kicking coach in? Do we need to spend more time on kicking? Yep. So sometimes by bringing those people in, you actually compound the problem.
Yep.
And I think you've got to look over the whole season and say, is it an aberration for a week or two? Has it been going on all season?
It's been going on a lot this season. It's just been quite I actually, when watched Port play the other week, and I thought they had the game very comfortably, Then the beautiful little tap down from Lysard and Butters gets a goal, and everyone's jumping up, and I looked at the scoreboard going, that's only just put them 10 points up, and then but they've had 10 more shots at goals, and it's happening a lot.
I reckon the reason it's happening is twofold. The first one is we've got multiple goal kickers now. So traditionally used to go to the full forward. So it's direct and normally good angles at shots on goals.
Real specialised goal kickers.
So you had the specialist goal kicker. Now we're seeing 10 goal kickers in a game from each team. So I don't think they're as practiced as the one and only goal kicker that we traditionally had.
Do you think the 36 players in the 50 arcs got a problem as well?
I reckon that's putting a bit of pressure on you. Also the way that they're flooding, and so you're coming out at wide angles. So they're often different angles.
Yeah.
I think that's when the fans and people like us get upset. You've got a chance straight in front. How can you miss that? We can accept that one, not that one. I think the second part is that I just don't think they practice.
Yeah.
I don't think they're in a routine. Now, you know in your time that if you were struggling, Matty Lloyd was an expert at this.
Yeah.
He'd go and do 50 to 100 shots at the end of every training.
But they were specialist goal kickers back
Exactly
then.
right.
We haven't got them anymore.
But no one does that now, because the sports science people say, oh, look, he's a bit overloaded from the training load, so we've got to back him off. He can't do the extra training. So there's no routine in what they're doing. Because, you know, when you practice, you get into, is it 10 steps
Do you
back?
remember Paul
Is it
Salmon's
15?
routine?
Yep.
He used to put the ball in between his thighs. He'd pull his socks up, wipe his hands, grab his mouth guard, put it in his sock. And even as a teammate, you're going, you can't be serious. You know, really? But he'd go back, that was his routine. And like Dunstall, like Lockett, you know, they kick their goals.
Yeah. And I just think there's more of them now and they're not practicing.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the weakness is. So it's a question of, can you get all those players into routine? So I take the mark. I know I'm taking 10, 12, whatever my number of steps are back, and I'm in my routine and away I go. I mean, the elements have an effect in footy that doesn't happen in basketball because we're inside. Unless
you're
at
playing everywhere now. You're playing in so many positions. I mean,
there it is.
You know, look at if you're a 6 footer. You know, you could probably play in 6 or 7 positions on the field.
So I reckon that's where it's coming from. There's more goal kickers.
Yeah.
So again, get in a routine.
What a great segment! What a great segment!
Oh, please. No show without Ando. If I was at Samsung and had my air conditioner now, mate, I'd flick the button and turn it off. Stay with us. We'll be back after the break. Yes, we're sitting down here at Ray White, North Adelaide, and we're sitting with the owner of Ray White, North Adelaide, Rachel. Ando, what are you doing here? You're not part of this. Get off. Get off. This is not your segment. We've had no show without Ando. Now we want no Ando and we can have a show. Hey, Rach, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No,
thank you for coming to the office.
It's an absolute pleasure. Now, you spend a lot of your sponsorship dollars with community sport. Why that?
It's really important to give back to those that support you. Coming from the country, you revolved entirely around your community clubs. And if you were in trouble, it was the community club that always stepped up to help those families out in need. So when I came to the city and started in the real estate, to me, it was just a logical choice to start a community program that supported people and embraced everything about sport, what's good about it, to have people around you, the health side of it. It's a good way of living and it's a friendship. And as we know, especially through COVID, that without sport, mental health becomes a bit of a strain. So to me, I need to give back to the smaller communities that need that help. And I give a lot back into junior sport now because I think it's extremely important that we have the kids out there leading a healthy life and not on this social media stuff.
All right, you're a parent, you've got a couple of kids. One of your daughters footy, soccer, surfing, so you've got your kids actively involved in sport as well. Is that, and obviously some of your sponsorship normally goes to where your kids are playing. You're happy seeing the kids out playing sport?
Yeah, definitely. I know that after they've played a game, they're much happier. It's just it's a natural process, as you know, through like the biology side of things that it raises serotonin levels. They're in a better mindset with life when they're out playing sport. They get stuck inside and it definitely changes. And my girls, without sport, that first part of COVID, it was driving them nuts.
All right, COVID impacted fairly heavily on sport. What about Ray White Real Estate here at North Adelaide? How's it impacted on them?
Yeah, it did impact us initially, and it was changing. And there's been an evolution in real estate with COVID. I call it my COVID evolution. We saw a backwards trend for those first few weeks while we were making adjustments. There's a lot of contracts lost, unfortunately. But that was because people were losing jobs. Once the stability happened, people knew where they were. Banks started loaning again. In the sales side of it, it picked up. With the rental side, that was a really challenging time because we were faced with tenants that lost their jobs, but not only tenants, the landlords lost jobs too. So it was a balancing act trying to help all those people out because the last thing I wanted was any of my clients without a roof over their head. So we worked together as a team and as a community, and we stayed in contact, and the communication levels were sky high, and we worked our way through it. We only had a couple of people that were struggling, but We all stuck together. There was food drops from landlords to tenants and vice versa. Yeah, it was a really, as though it was a bad time for the world, it was actually a really good time. It was a humbling time for my business.
Oh, you got a great attitude towards it, Wade. We really appreciate you sponsoring our segment. And it's fantastic the way you look after the community and all the kids here. If you're looking for some real estate, get down to O'Connell Street, Ray White at North Adelaide. Back in a tick. Welcome back to Before the Bounce. Time to get Game of the State segment by Air Diffusion Agencies. Our good mate Billy's got it going, mate. Well, the Ranella boys got up on the weekend. They did, mate. Wasn't a bad win for them either. So Port Nalunga has been a team that's been playing pretty well in the Southern Footy League, so they got them by 4 points.
Yep, and they're only a game out now. So Ranella have sort of just, I don't know, I reckon they might fall short of games because they only got a couple of games left for the final start. But they've run home okay.
All right, now went the other way. Of course, Flagstaff Hill sit on top of the ladder. Cove, who were one of your team, when you were there coaching, this wouldn't have happened to them, but a nasty 116-point belting.
You said this a couple of weeks ago. As the year goes on, you see a lot of the separation from the top and in the amateur league, and we're seeing that right across the board in all the amateur country leagues, and unfortunately, Cove went down by 116 points. But like I said, I did have a look at a lot of the Murray League and the Southern League, and you look at the
same thing happening.
Barossa League. It's all starting to happen. It's really.
Well, it's the same in the AFL though. Yeah. If you look at that, and the same in the SANFL, although that's been a little bit closer. Once that start to get into that finals mode, the gap starts to widen, doesn't it? So.
But I'll tell you about the with Christie's Beach and Flagstaff Hill and that Southern League. That's going to be an absolute
that's on this weekend.
That's going to be absolutely
1v2.
But I'm telling you, both sides have got about 8 to 10 ex-SANFL players playing for them. I mean, that's how dominant they are. So I think they'll go down the wire and play in the grand final. But it's worth getting down there for the first.
I reckon it's going to be a minute too. They met about 4 weeks ago, mate. Yeah. Christie's took a bit of a hammering, so I know the boys are up and about, and they rested 2 or 3 players on the weekend that are coming back from injury.
It's a game.
I think we might get a preview of the grand final, mate. The Hills League down there in Harndorf, mate. Harndorf continue to dominate down there in the Hills League, don't they? Of course, they got ex-Crows, Matty Jench and Kyle Cheney, and they've got South Adelaide Vice-Captain Michael Hanby down there, so they've got a pretty nice team.
3 fantastic players, yep. Of course, Michael, I think he was drafted many years ago to Melbourne Footy Club, so he's been on a list. I'm not sure whether he got a couple of AFL games. He might have actually. So you're talking three players of a lot of experience, and I actually coached Michael when I was coaching South Adelaide. Super player, great bloke, super player. So they're going to be hard to beat. All
right, before we go to the break, mate, we should mention too, of course, the North Adelaide women got their first premiership on the weekend over South Panthers, mate. So it was a 7-point win. It was a good game though. 1 point difference in the first quarter. Second quarter, there's a goal that's scored by the Roosters just after the siren.
That's right.
Then they opened them up in the third quarter, and then went goalless in the last quarter. We were able to hold on for that 7-point win. So well done to the Rooster ladies, and we need to get to a break. Back in a moment. Hey, just before we get started, mate, Air Diffusion Agencies, mate, I forgot to mention, mate, they're down at Welland, Salisbury, Longsdale here in South Australia. Billy's also got stores in Queensland and Darwin.
He's fine, mate. He's flying, old Billy.
I was really fortunate. I got a bit of time with Billy last week. We went down to see my mate Neil Curley, and Billy came down. We had lunch down there. And it was the most enjoyable trip I reckon I've had back and forth for a long time.
He's a character.
He is a self-made man. I really admire him.
That's the key to it all.
There's a lot of courage by him. Yep. Mate, Neil Sachs unfortunately passed away this week, 69 years old. Passed away quietly, so our thoughts are with family and friends there. He played in 2 premierships in the 70s, back-to-back ones.
He's a super player.
A super player, mate. It's just almost sort of sad that he's... that's how we remember him. Unfortunately, not for his great footy. So we remember him in the wheelchair, but he was a ripping bloke. Hey, mate, it's time to get to my inner league of their own. So we've had a couple.
My favourite.
Your favourite?
There's no question.
After
Johnny Platt, Gavin Wangan, Mark Rashudo. You've had some.
Well, mate, what about this one? The Jumbo Prince, Rick Davies, mate. So just a little bit on his checklist for you. 317 games for Sturt. 635 goals as a ruckman, as a forward. Best and fairest, 73, 74, 75, 76, 78, 79 and 80. And he had some pretty handy players around him in that time too, if you don't mind. Of course, he's in the Sturt team of the century. 2 premierships, 74 and 76. He's All-Australian, 79 and 80. 20 state games for South Australia. He only won the Ken Farmer medal once as the leading goal kicker, and that was for a record 151 goals. And he went to Hawthorn, of course, but that was late in his career, but he still played pretty well. and possibly gave the greatest speech ever when he was inducted into the Footy Hall of Fame.
How relaxed was he with that speech? How relaxed. It was just like he was at a nightclub at a bar. That's what he was.
He's pretty
Just
impressive, isn't he?
fantastic. And some of his stories, I mean, just brilliant. You know, and you can really, see Rick cutting a few corners at pre-season, and everyone else runs, 10Ks, and somehow he gets around the block and hides behind a stovey pole, and he ends up running 150.
I reckon everyone's got
man.
everyone's got a Rick Davies story. KG tells a great story when he was calling for AA and Rick was working for AA, and Adam Uze had come into his first year playing, and they went down to Rick, and he just started playing well, and he said, the new player for Melbourne, how's he going? He said, Zzz, Zzz, going really good. He didn't know his name was Uze, so he just called him Zzz. Everyone listening to the radio going, who the hell's Rick talking about down there? But mate,
he's a very funny man.
On top of that, mate, 1976 grand final against Port Adelaide, there's 66,000 people that day, and he kicks 21 kicks, 21 handballs, 21 hit-outs, and he took 15 marks. I mean, that is a massive game.
I was 9 or 10, lined up with my brother. We lined up at about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
Because in those days, pre-sale tickets. And it was one of the worst days of my life. Can I say it to you? It was a Rick Davies show.
Yep.
And I just shed a tear at the end of that game. It was just a really sad day for Port supporters. We thought we were going to do it in '76, and Rick Davies
big Rick tore it.
Just absolutely tore it.
Of course, he took
apart.
over from Don Scott and coached South Adelaide for 3 years as well, mate. You got a little scrib on
It's
him.
a really interesting stat, this one, actually. The year he kicked 151 goals, there was a great player. He ended up playing fantastic for Sturt. Ian Wilmot was just sneaking around the place. He kicked 99 goals in the reserves. But he got one league game that year because Rick played in the state game.
Okay.
Ian kicked 6 goals against Nord, and then straight back to the Resics. I mean, that's just amazing.
Imagine doing that
we
today.
We loved full forwards in those days. You don't see that anymore.
Well, that's what we touched on before.
Dedicated full forward.
Yep.
And he goes from the Resics. He goes and kicks 6 goals. I mean, and he probably had 7 shots at goals and kicked 6 goals, 1.
Well, that might explain the inaccuracy that we were talking about earlier in the show, mate. Not enough designated goal kickers.
Rick Davies was certainly the player that I hated most as a Port supporter, because he was so bloody good.
Yeah.
And he hurt Port Adelaide time and time again, and a kid just sitting with his brothers or his old man and just watching the Rick Davies show against Port Adelaide was sad. Rick Davies was brilliant. So
we've inducted him, mate, into a league of their own. Rick Davies, Sturt champion, and ripping bloke. Time for us to go. Thanks to Samsung, Air Diffusion Agencies, and Ray White here at North Adelaide. Look forward to your company next week. Bye now.
Next week.